Alrighty, y'all. Hello and welcome to the video. It is Friday. The weekend is here. I hope it's going to be a great one for you. I'm super excited. And yeah, Friday means fun. I found some of the most insane things, truly. I mean, we say that every week, but really some good stuff coming out of the European region and the world, actually, for this one. This is going to be a fun video. Let's get right into it. All right, starting out with something kind of crazy. There, you can see the thumbnail. Scientists discovered the world's largest spider web. I didn't even know that was a thing. The largest spider web ever. But it's kind of fascinating, the world we live in. Covering 106 meters squared in a sulfur cave on the Albania and Greece border. Over 111,000 spiders from two normally rival species live together in a unique self-sustaining ecosystem, a first of its kind. Now, this kind of thing is just mind-blowing, how they actually find something like this, especially something you wouldn't even think exists on paper. Rival species living together in a self-sustaining ecosystem, like that doesn't sound like it should happen, but here we are. Yeah, let's take a look. Let's actually do this full screen, and let's do this. I don't think there's sound, but yeah, that actually doesn't look like a spider web because you're not used to seeing them this full and this big. I have to say, this guy is a lot braver than I. I would not be anywhere near this, nor would I be touching it. Nor would I be touching it over and over again. I'm just waiting for some giant, freakishly huge spider out of a horror movie to jump out at this guy. Say, like, stop messing with my web, bro. You know? This is pretty crazy, though. It would be thrilling for some people, I guess, if you're pretty strange. I would not be thrilled about this, but I'm okay with watching it through a screen. I'll say that. It is interesting. It just would be very terrifying in person if you're not the biggest fan of spiders. You know, imagine walking through this as well, right? I think we've all, gone in the garage or in the basement or even outside, right? You go in between a couple bushes or whatever, and everyone's kind of walked through a spider web at one point, right? It's kind of annoying. You feel it. You're like, oh, great. And then you got to try and pick it off, and you're hoping the spider's not crawling in your ears or down your shirt or whatever. This would hit a little different, though. I mean, walking through this, oof, if it was dark in there, that might be it, right? I mean, you were wrapped up like a mummy at that point. I don't know. I don't know how you recover from that. Sir, stop groping the spider web. I know, right? Why are we touching it? That's what I'm saying. Why are we touching this? That's kind of leave it alone. You could document it. I'm going to run through these. I thought these were pretty cool. So you see, typical depictions of historical figures like this, right? Paintings, pictures like this. But we have this where you have that, and then you have the actual photographs of them. So, we have Maria Amalia here, last queen of France, but then you have an actual photo of her in 1846. So I'll just kind of go through these. I'm not going to read them all because that will take too long. I'll probably get some of the names wrong anyway. But it's kind of cool to see how they were, depicted in your typical painting or whatever when you would look them up. And then see an actual photograph. You see similarities and, of course, differences as well. A lot of times, of course, be in different outfits, different styles, different ages, right, that don't exactly line up with the painting. But some of them, you actually see similarities that are like, oh, okay, that was a pretty accurate depiction, right? Big head on this guy, but they weren't wrong. There it is. With this one, right? Very kind of eccentric fashion there. And it almost carries through into the photograph as well. But I think this is pretty cool. Similar hairstyle there. King Leopold. There you go. Yeah, I think these are pretty fascinating. I've actually never seen side-by-sides like that. And it's amazing to think that photographs, 1842, right? I mean, what did that camera look like? I think it's really, really cool, though. And I think a lot of times we forget in the age of digital and technology and digital photos everywhere, it's hard to kind of comprehend that they actually had the ability to take photographs in the 1800s. I think that's awesome. Damn, that painter did Ferdinand dirty. Swipes. damn, that painter was very forgiving. Oh, man, these are so bad. I mean, I had to say it. There's no way Ferdinand's head is shaped like that. Oh. Now, here's an odd question that you've probably never been asked before, but I wonder how people would answer this. I think this person might have the best answer. That question would be, where is the best bench in the world? Where's the best bench you can think of? This might be a candidate for number one, I have to admit. Best bench in the world. This is in Italy. 10 out of 10 bench. Not something you might think of all the time. But when you see that, yeah, that's going to have my vote. I can't really think of, all the benches I've seen and where they are, but I can confidently say not quite, came across too many benches like this. I think it's safe to say most of us watching this would gladly wake up in the morning, have your preferred wake up, brew, whether that's coffee, water, tea, beer, no judgment here, whatever, right? Picture just taking a nice, crisp 10-minute, relaxation session, stretching the legs, sitting down on that bench and just taking in the morning air or the sunset air, whatever you prefer. And that's your view. Now, this is pretty cool. We highlight kind of renovations sometimes because this is something as an American, again, like we don't really have here when it comes to the unbelievably historic places you have in European countries. And then how when they actually have to restore them eventually, they do a great job in making it look like original, right? They don't restore it, make it all modern, right? They keep it period correct, but with a modern restoration. I think that's very cool, and it's a very delicate balance. And as someone who doesn't typically witness that a lot near me, I just think it's ultra fascinating, right? And this is, you gotta bear with me here. I think this is pronounced, because it's got that L letter there, I think Gołącz, something like that. Gołącz Castle in Poland. Before and after renovation, you can see before. I mean, it's old, right? It's getting a little rough shape there, and they did a spectacular job kind of reviving it here. And it still looks historic, right? It doesn't look like all modernized, which would kind of be a shame, right? So, yeah, you can see a big hole there. It's all fixed up. I think it looks really cool. And there's, probably thousands of examples of this in European cities and stuff. But this is very cool. Like, look at this, for example. Look at how accurate they kept that, how good of a job it looks. Like, this one kind of, to me, looks amazing. But at the same time, this is a compliment. It doesn't look like it was just renovated, right? I think that's a goal. You don't want it to look modern. It looks like period correct, and I think that's cool. The door is very interesting, by the way. Look at it all lit up. That's the only modern thing you might see here, but perfectly justified. I think it looks very cool, lit up at night here with these floor spotlights. Yeah, that is so cool. Lots of different angles covered here. I mean, how did they do those windows and stuff? I think this is just so awesome. My American mind can't really comprehend it, but to some people, they might not even bat an eye at this. To me, I think the simple things renovated with care like this, I think it's very cool. Now, I think there's plenty of comments, on the internet of people, from the UK correcting, probably mostly Americans, misusing the UK or not perfectly and, understanding how deep and big the UK is, right? Or not knowing it properly. What can you expect, right? But this is, I have to say, it's actually pretty crazy. This one's titled, Why England is Just One Small Part of the UK. And I knew the UK was a lot more than England, right? I'd like to think I'm a little better than the average American in this type of stuff. But I have to say, I did not know it was this extensive. This is pretty interesting. So this is actually, if you want to be technical, this is the UK. I mean, look at this. We have the British Isles, right? And so you have the UK, Great Britain, Scotland, Wales, and England. And then, of course, Northern Ireland, if you include that as a UK, but not Great Britain. So I've learned over time that distinction. And you have crown dependencies and channel islands like Jersey, Isle of Man. Okay, but then look at how big this actually goes, right? I'm not going to read all these, but there's some really fascinating places I didn't actually realize were still connected to the UK. I think this is really interesting to see how big this is, even in relatively modern times. Also, I thought I'd throw this in there. I thought this was wild. I guess Mozambique is in this chart, but they were never like a British colony. They just kind of walked its way or talked its way into the Commonwealth, but they weren't a colony ever. So I think that's kind of fascinating. I don't know what that's about. Now, inventions are always interesting. This one actually is from a German inventor, okay? And this one may seem small, but it's actually pretty big, pretty important. I'm sure millions of examples of this. You know, this is more important than it might appear. The man who changed construction forever. And you might notice these things, right? These little wall plugs. I've used these in our homes. As you know, American construction is very lackluster, at least when it comes to, you know, big strength and tough materials that you might find in other countries. But even so, these are kind of one of the most important things you could have here because the drywall is very famously weak and thin here. And if you expect to drill a screw just into the drywall, it's not going to hold anything. The walls are pretty pathetic, right? This changes the game, though. You can actually put these in, then drill a screw into this, and it actually makes it a lot stronger and anchors it in there. And I did not realize or even think that this was technically an invention that some guy had to invent. But here we are. 1958 German inventor Arthur Fischer transformed construction forever with the creation of the plastic wall plug, a deceptively simple tool that allowed screws to grip firmly in concrete, brick, and drywall. This humble invention revolutionized DIY and professional building alike, earning Fisher over 1,100 patents and a place among the most prolific inventors of the 20th century. I think this is really, really cool. Now, this is also really cool, totally different, but fascinating when you kind of think about it, right? In 2017, a British man struggling to sell his £500,000 mansion came up with a wild idea. He raffled it off online for £2 a ticket. Sold nearly 500,000 entries, which, by the way, would be basically double the price of what he originally wanted and couldn't sell it for. Cleared his debts and handed the keys to a factory worker who won. So look at that. Everyone wins. He gets way more money than he originally would have ever got for selling his house. That's a mansion. He just sold it, period. He couldn't sell it. He sold it, so that's a win. He got more money. That's a win. And if you think about it, a factory worker who probably wouldn't have been able to afford a house like this won. So everyone wins, right? Like, this is kind of crazy. What an interesting idea. This kind of thing probably doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it kind of makes you wonder, right? My only concern with this even is, as cool as it is, I wonder how it all kind of settled, right, after the dust settled. How's a factory worker handle this? Do they still have to pay taxes on this, which would probably be very expensive? Did they even like the place? Was it usable for them, or did they turn around and sell it too? Would it have still been hard to sell? This guy, the British man who owned it and raffled it off, does he pay taxes on like the lottery type thing? I don't. There's a lot of unanswered questions here, but regardless, I thought this was pretty cool. Irish police got a call about a lion. It was actually a dog with a fresh haircut. This is hilarious. I could see from like 50 feet away, I could see from like 50 meters away. You might think this is a lion. That would be kind of freaky, but if you see up close, odd choice for a haircut, but I have to say it's very unique. In Sibiu, Romania, someone is always watching. Imagine thinking, right? Maybe you're higher intoxicated. You're thinking that all the houses are watching you. But, I have to say, the way these are built, it is very odd. Why did they build them like that? That is really weird. That's actually awful. I hope this never becomes a style of architecture. I wonder if psychologically this somehow reduces crime in the area. It's like medieval cameras. I bet it probably could, right? Like, this is pretty freaky. And the fact that it's not one weird house, it's like a whole, array, like a whole group of buildings that look like this. This Icelandic horse is famous for its unique march called Toit, which offers an incredible smooth ride. Oh my God, look at that. Okay, he is booking it, this horse. But it is amazingly stable. Like, look at the actual human here, the rider. They're like barely moving at all. They're not going like this, right? Like they're totally smooth. That is beyond fascinating. What is the secret? How is something moving? How is something that big moving that fast and not having like any shaking at all? Wow. One-person elevator found in residential buildings in Milan. Oh my goodness. Oh, hell no. Okay. Let's be real. I'd say half of Americans couldn't even fit in this. I'm not sure I could fit in that at all. Yo, this is absolutely crazy. Don't people get claustrophobic in this? I mean, it already looks small, and then the other door's closed, so it's even tighter in there. That is insane. This is what I'm talking about. Imagine being inside when it malfunctions. Yo, that is like one of the worst nightmares you could think of. That is terrifying. Now, we all love examples of especially German engineering, right? And Porsche is no exception to this. They're very, very impressive, okay? This kind of proves that. Take a look. This is amazing. To maintain a highly reliable performance reputation during development, Porsche torture tests its engines on a hydraulic rig that tilts, twists, and shakes it vigorously for hundreds of hours while it revved to circuit racing levels, simulating endurance racing levels of stresses and G-forces. I think this is absolutely insane, and not your typical commuter car goes through torture tests like this, I imagine. Wow. Yo, that is insane, for sure. Oh, they have audio, too. Hold on. Here we go. That is actually freaking awesome. Because if you don't know, if you're not like super into vehicles or cars, you know, when you're turning hard, right? Like, everything in your car, including your engine and all the fluids inside it, especially the oil, right, can move around a lot. If you're getting thrown around, you're turning very hard, you have elevation changes, right? It's not like the car is perfectly flat all the time. That's not possible, right? G-forces move everything around. And so you don't want to have one side of the engine starved, right? If you're like turning one way and it's, banked and all this stuff, you have to have a very well-built, fluid circulating engine to hold up to abuse like this, especially on, crazy racetracks and stuff. So the fact that they think of this and test it, probably to way more extreme conditions than you would usually get most times, and it holds up, I think is beyond impressive. I mean, this is very cool. Speaking of cars, what the hell is this? That's what someone asks. Looks like a Fiat, 100%. Even I know that, but there you go. Why are the rear wheels right next to each other in the middle of the car? And we have this dress-up tire cover over here, right? This looks super weird. It looks stock in the front, and it looks like a motorcycle in the back. I'm very confused. Apparently, it's a conversion where they consider it a trike to take advantage of a loophole in the law to allow a 16-year-old to drive. Yeah, that's really weird. I don't know how this would be like better or safer than the stock setup, but here we are. This is pretty crazy. Now, I have to do more research on this. I've been told to look at I think these are called Żabkas in Poland. I guess they're a pretty cool store. And they will literally put it everywhere. This is in somewhere called Wieliczka. It looks like it's in a cave to me or underground. I don't know. Looks pretty crazy. I don't know if this is real or not. I think it is. And I have to say that would be a pretty damn unique store experience. And if you're a fan of this, I've heard a lot of good things about this chain of stores. This looks like a pretty fun experience. I will say that. This car was completely disassembled and suspended? Okay, how much freaking work was this? Holy crap. You know, it is incredible how many parts there are on a regular sedan like this. Look at that. That is the best visual you will ever see. This might be one of the coolest things I've ever seen. How many freaking parts? Thousands upon thousands, right? What are we talking? 30,000, 50,000 parts on a regular car? That is insane. It's actually a wonder it all works. And it's actually a wonder that of course, you always have to maintain cars and replace things, but it's kind of a wonder that more doesn't go wrong, right? If you think about it, a lot of these do last a long time, right? Of course, some parts don't, but a lot of it relatively does a pretty good job over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? When you see it kind of blown up like this, like that many parts, man, it is freaking cool. When you buy a car from IKEA, I don't see no hex wrench. Yeah, you might need a little more than a hex wrench for this project. German and Japanese Air Force did a joint exercise recently. I have to say this is probably one of the most badass pictures you've ever seen recently, right? I mean, look at this, right? The handshake, just casually, how many miles, kilometers in the air, right? Fighter jets behind. Yeah, just a casual picture, There are still German World War II steam locomotives being used daily in Europe. What the hell? This is crazy. Wow. How fascinating. That's not something you see every day, I imagine. And to add to the post from a couple minutes ago, here's a BMW cut in half, literally, and like literally cut in half. This is so fascinating. Again, I don't even know how they did this. Unbelievable. People don't appreciate how freaking cool this is. I really do want to know how they did this. This is beyond impressive. And you kind of get a sense here how involved a regular just BMW sedan is. Gee, this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. This is a Boeing 747 slicing through the sky at 900 kilometers per hour or 560 miles per hour. I don't know how they took this video, by the way. I'm assuming from a different plane. I don't know if this is planned or by accident or what, but it is just wow. Super freaking cool. I don't know the science behind it, but that thing's hauling ass. And, that crazy trail it leaves, like, whoa. Seeing it just right point blank. That is freaking awesome. And it's one of those rare cases where you get a real life clip that is more impressive than stuff you see in movies, right? Like, this is really cool. Now, this is something we get like two parts here. I don't know where this is. If you could tell me, I would be delighted because people don't seem to exactly know in the comments. But this is a bizarre shaped tree formed by decades of strong wind, as you can see. And it is very, very bizarre. I don't know if this tells any clues, geography experts out there, GeoGuessr experts. If you know where this is, again, put it in the comments. You're a rock star if you know this. But it is a very unique tree. And the reason this is a two-parter is in the comments, they do mention a different tree that was very famous and kind of odd. And they're hoping that this tree that we see right here doesn't get, vandalized or cut down because the one we're about to show did. And that is the sycamore gap tree. This is actually in England. And sad to say that this thing, some idiots cut this down very recently. Apparently, this thing has been in, films and movies. It won Tree of the Year. I didn't even know that was a thing. But, this was in England. I think this is very cool and aesthetic, of course. It was a 120-year-old sycamore tree next to Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland, England. It was illegally felled in 2023, so very recently, only 2 years ago. And I think that's just an absolute shame, right? Here's a picture 2 days after it was felled, you see? I mean, this took a lot of work, right? Like, what kind of asshole would go through the effort to do that? I just don't understand, right? It sucks because it ruins it for everyone else that wanted to see this and maybe he didn't get to yet. But you can see kind of before, like, how cool this thing was, right? I mean, it's very odd. Like, in a mostly treeless kind of region here, you have this thing right in this gap. It's very cool. It is totally something you'd see out of a storybook or a movie, hence why it has been featured and stuff like that. I mean, it almost looks like something you would draw up, but doesn't really exist. But it did exist. My only hope is that apparently, if you kind of read through this, they think that the trunk is still healthy and it can regrow back. But unfortunately, for most of us, we won't be able to see it in this kind of state, at least again, because, to get this big and this prominent, it's going to take 150 to 200 years. So that sucks. Don't vandalize stuff. Like, come on. I know most people don't, but there's always idiots everywhere. But I'm glad we get to see pictures of it. It's something I didn't know about, and I think is very cool. And finally, we have this video I thought was pretty fascinating. We have a unique encounter at the very top of the world. The Russian nuclear icebreaker, 50 Years of Victory, meets the French icebreaker vessel commandment Charcot at the North Pole. That was a mouthful. I probably got it wrong. My apologies. You can see everyone waving to each other. I think this is so cool. Two massive ships, right? And they get right head on. I think that's so crazy. Notice how different they look, too. This is why the world's so interesting. That huge ship, people mentioned actually in the comments, I'll show you, it looks so Russian. You don't know how to, like, really describe that, but it looks Russian, right? You don't know why, but it does. And it does. It looks so different. And the French ship looks totally different. It looks more, to me, like a cruise ship or something very, like, elegant and luxurious. And the Russian ship just looks kind of harsh and very functional and not pretty, right? It's cool, though. It's cool to see the difference and them meeting and everyone's waving and you're literally at the top of the world, like ice breaking. Whole new definition of, having an icebreaker in conversation, right? Yeah, I thought that was super fascinating. It is Friday. That's going to do it for this one. There's so much more we could look at. I thought this was a really fun kind of collage of things, though. I really hope you enjoyed it. I can't wait to see the comments on this, of course. And, I really appreciate you watching. I hope your weekend's going to be awesome. And I guess that's about it. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, y'all. Catch you later.